Hey, everybody. Um, Welcome to Senior Seminar. You can see that this is what Casual Friday Dr. Behl looks like here. Um, I wanted to talk to you guys real quick, and I figured this would be a lot easier than trying to uh, type out an email or anything else about your paper topics. So basically, what I'm looking for is a detailed kind of research question that you guys are hoping to answer throughout the course of the semester. The whole point of this class is just do one big major research project on a topic. Now, in some ways, coming up with the topic is a fairly simple thing, and in some ways, it can actually be quite complicated. Um, you want to come up with something that's sufficiently specific that you can actually narrow it down and actually study something, but you also want it to be broad enough that it's not um, too detailed where there's no resources out there. So, for example, you don't want to say something like, do people that were born in St. Augustine to single parents of an ethnic minority more likely to commit crime than people that were born with two parents that were white? There's just going to be That's just far too specific in terms of the detail, and there's not going to be a whole lot of research or literature on that topic for you to actually write your paper. And so you might want to. Oh, I'm getting interrupted here by Ruby, the Crime Fighting Corgi. Ruby, say hi. You want to say hi to everybody? Who's that? Is that the class? Okay. So anyway, all right, heal, calm down. A potential research idea that you guys could study is something like, we've gone over a tremendous amount of theories. Okay, Ruby, you're really okay. Go over here. Um, we've gone over a bunch of theories over the course of your education here at Flagler, right? So you might compare and contrast two different theoretical ideas to a specific crime. Like, for example, does general strain theory offer a better explanation of shoplifting than social learning theory? Or you could look at something like, do law enforcement that are trained in mental health respond to situations differently compared to law enforcement that are not trained in mental health? There's a bunch of different kind of ideas you could go with. Any topic that's interesting to you, you can do, as long as the question is such that there's enough information out there to study, but it's not so sufficiently broad. Like, a really bad research question that's far too broad would be something like, is our criminal justice system racist? Well, what does that mean? What part of our criminal justice system? What are we talking about police? We're talking about courts, and how are we defining racism? Are we saying that minorities are sentenced harsher? Are they arrested more? Are they pulled over more? It's just far too broad to just have a big blanket topic like that. So when thinking about your research ideas, make sure that it is specific enough to be answerable, but also not too specific that you can't actually find any research on this. And again, I want to stress the fact that this is a proposal. You're not actually carrying out this research project at all. You're just writing up a proposal as if you were going to do it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on throughout the semester. Another thing that you want to make sure, this is a common problem that people have, is that when writing the research question, they don't necessarily always do a comparison group. So going back to the law enforcement example, what often happens is people might write a question that says something to the extent of, do police officers who are trained in mental health respond differently to offenders? And just stop. Well, differently than whom? Differently than the public, differently than police officers that were not trained in mental health, differently than lawyers, differently than judges. And so it's important that you have that kind of comparison group to make it clear who it is that you are comparing to. And so that is another kind of tip to make sure that you include. I'm also going to briefly go over what you need to do for your next assignment for the outline. The outline should be probably at least, I would say, 2 to 3 pages. And it should be a fairly detailed outline. I should be able to read it and have a really good idea of kind of where you're going with this whole project. It's kind of weird that I can see myself in my glasses in the video. The outline should be fairly detailed. There should be citations in the outline, so I know you guys have started to do some of the work. And pretty much by the time you turn in your outline, you can't really change your research project anymore. If you pick a topic and then as you're writing your outline realize that this topic might be too specific or it might be too broad, you can change it, before you turn in the outline, but once the outline's in, you're kind of married to your project because you're going to really fall behind if you decide to change it after the lit review or after the methodology or something like that. So make sure that you're taking the next week or so and really focusing on finding articles and writing a fairly detailed outline. The basic structure of the paper, right? There's going to be an introduction section, a literature review section, a method section, and an implication section. What the intro and lit review should do, and this is important as you're developing your outline to know this, is that it should kind of start off sufficiently broad and narrow down to where, as I'm reading the paper, your research question is the logical conclusion to the arguments you've made in these other big sections. One of the big things that students do, and this is common in graduate school as well as in undergrad, is that they will develop or write a lit review, and they'll just write, I found this article, here's what this article says. I found this article, here's what this article said. Well, that's not particularly helpful, because if I wanted to know what that article said, I just go read that article, right? I don't need your summary of it. That's not particularly helpful. You want to synthesize all of the research together into an argument. You should actually be making some sort of an argument. One of the things that you have on Canvas right now is a reading called He Couldn't Have Done It, He Was With Me by Dahl and Price. And it's a very short article. And what I want everyone to do is read the intro, lit review, and methods sections only of that paper. And I think that that's like 4 pages or something. It's really not that long. And so everyone should read that. And then in a future lecture that I record, I'm going to kind of work through that article with you guys so you can see that in the lit review section, Heather, I know Heather Price fairly well. She's not just saying, here's what this research says, just FYI. She's making an argument throughout that section. And that's kind of what you guys need to be doing, is starting broad and kind of working your way down. So again, using that example that I kind of gave about police officers trained in mental health versus not, there's a lot of different ways you could structure an article on that. And so one way might be you start off broad. Police officers are dealing with mentally ill populations, right? That's a very broad idea. And there's no question about that. How are some of the ways that police officers are dealing with them? Well, sometimes police officers are dealing with violent mentally ill people. Sometimes they're dealing with people that might need to be Baker acted and taken to a mental health hospital. Sometimes they respond to a scene and they have no way of knowing whether or not the person was mentally ill or not. So what are the consequences of this, for lack of better verbiage, ignorance to the mental health status? Well, sometimes they might interpret someone as violent. That's not really, it's just mentally ill. They might interpret behaviors as non-compliant when really it's a mental illness causing the non-compliance as opposed to a disobedient offender, right? And so because of all of that, one suggested police reform is mental health training for law enforcement. And so I kind of started broad, right, and worked my way through to this logical question of, will police officers that are trained in mental illness actually respond differently to mentally ill populations compared to police officers not trained in mental illness? And the importance of that is, if that training helps, well, then we should mandate training for police officers. At the same time, and this is where an implication section comes in, at the same time, what if we find out that that training doesn't help? Well, then let's not waste our time on having a 1-hour seminar for police officers on mental health training or a full day class. And maybe we need to change the way we hire law enforcement. Maybe we need to hire law enforcement that are actually educated in mental illness in some capacity, like hiring clinical social workers, hiring licensed mental health counselors to be law enforcement officers. And maybe that would be a better approach. And so either way that the results pan out, there are implications that we need to study. And so we start broad with this, it kind of looks like a funnel or a martini glass or any sort of shape, like an upside down triangle, if you will, where we start broad with this topic of policing the mentally ill, differential policing of mentally ill populations versus criminal populations. And it leads us down to our research question. Here's how we plan on studying it. And then it kind of goes back out broad a little bit. And Ruby's back, right? Okay. And it goes back out broad to the implications of, here's why this research project actually matters and is important. All of those elements need to be present in some capacity in the outline, right? And so make sure you have an intro, like, Roman numeral 1, intro, Roman numeral 2, lit review, Roman numeral 3, methods, Roman numeral 4, implications, and have supporting ideas underneath all of those. I promise you, it is not going to be good enough to do Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. It's not going to be good enough to do Roman numeral 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, and that's it. I want to see that you've really thought through some of this and really started to kind of work and develop your ideas. Obviously, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to meet with you guys. I'm happy to Zoom. I'm usually on campus on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and so I'm happy to meet with you in person. We can schedule appointments at any point, really, if you just reach out to me and let me know if you have questions. So with that being said, I hope this kind of helped you in developing what your research question is. Oh, and one last thing is for the assignment, for turning in your research assignment or your research proposal or topic proposal, it really is okay if it's 1 or 2 sentences, but make sure that it's submitted in the form of your research question, not just a broad topic like racism in America, right? That's not good enough, right? And so make sure it's in the form of a question in some capacity. And other than that, I'm happy with just about any format, and I'll give you feedback individually as we kind of work through. So again, as always, if you need me, feel free to reach out. And if not, I look forward to talking to you soon, as does Ruby the Crime Fighting Corgi. Right, Ruby? She's just laying on my lap right now. Say bye-bye. You want to say bye-bye? All right, act as if that was goodbye. All right, I'll see y'all soon.